Okay. We're ready whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
All right, let's call this door at 7:33.
Okay. Miss
Yes.
Anthony,
Here.
Miss Clement,
Present.
Miss Shaw?
Here.
And Mr. Stevie.
I am here.
We have quorum, Mr. Chair.
Right. Review and approval of last meeting's minutes. I'll move that we approve last meeting's minutes and action report.
I will second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, sounds like we have that passes. We have the DRB discussion on guidelines. I'd like to move that.
Yet.
I'd like to move that agenda item to after. There's no need for our cases. You know, the people here are not associated with the board to sit through that conversation.
I agree. Does that need a second?
Yes.
I second the motion to move agenda item 3 to the end.
Should be like what, number 7 or 6 or 7? We have 2 cases today.
7.
I guess if we have a motion in a second, we got to vote on that one. Everyone in favor of making that change to the agenda? Aye.
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 Any opposed to making that change? No. Thank you. Gabriel will remind us when we get to the end that we move that if you can. Or if we have time. I also wanted to do it for time.
Able to attend till 9 o'clock. So if I'm here, I will.
Right. Okay. Well, hopefully we're not here then still. That's the point, right?
I'll remind you guys.
Item number 4, call the audience if there's anyone that's not associated with the 2 cases on the agenda today that would like to address the board. Now's your chance.
Other than what we already said in our appeal?
No, we'll probably address that during the when we talk about that case, Maureen.
Okay.
Usually call the audiences for if there's any general business someone would like to.
Oh, I've got it. Sorry.
That's okay. I think hearing none, let's move on to this DDO option appeal case.
Gabriel, so no sign of Mark?
Yeah. So I'll go ahead.
Okay.
So this is an appeal of item number originally 5, now 4. This case was continued from January 10th. This is an appeal of a DDO decision made. The DDO applicant requested the modification to reduce the setbacks for a like a workshop that had been added to the side of the house prior to the property owner acquiring the property, as well as modifying the setbacks for a shed structure behind the house, which was also existing prior to the property owner acquiring the property. So the DDO application was approved by the PDSD director on September 30th, and a notice of appeal was received within a week. The formal application for appeal was received on November 7th in accordance with the EDC. The applicant is requesting a reversal of the PDSD director's decision to approve the DDO, number DDO-24-81. And so the specific items which were approved, which can be reconsidered, are the DDO approval to approve the north perimeter yard setback to be reduced from 20 feet to 1 foot 6 inches for the workshop, measured from the building to the north lot line. 2, DDO approval to allow the north perimeter yard setback to be reduced from 20 feet to 4 feet 6 inches for the shed structure, measured from the structure to the north lot line, and approval to allow the east side perimeter yard setback to be reduced from 20 feet to 8 feet 4 inches for the shed structure, measured from the building to the east lot line. And that is that's the gist of it.
And Mr. Chair, members of the DRB's purview is to make a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment, who will make a decision on the appeal. And the criteria to follow is on attachment B of the agenda.
All right. Is there any other, I guess Mark was here prior, right, for last meeting and he had more in-depth information about the property and about the process, or about the criteria that were used to approve it?
So basically, the appeal only applies to the dimensional dimensional standards.
Correct.
Modification approved in the appeal, as long as the land use is allowed in the underlying zoning. That is not, the DRB's purview is not to consider anything like that. It's only for the 3 items specifically that were approved by the PDSD director. And I think the easiest way would just be if we just go down the checklist for general findings and specific findings for setback and wall height. We can ensure that all these decision criteria are covered by line.
And Mr. Chair, members of the DRB, I'm sharing on the screen the decision notice issued by the PDSD director on the original DDO approval.
Thank you, Maria.
Can we look at real quick is there a site plan that shows these modified distances with a property line, like with the entire site?
Yeah, there we go.
Because I think we're actually discussing 2 different structures.
That's correct. So there's the workshop structure attached to the house,
Right.
and then the metal outbuilding there in the northeast corner of the property. And so the first PDSD director's decision approval was for the that setback for the workshop structure on the side of the house of the property line. Right. And then there were items 2 and 3 were the 2 setback reductions for that work shed or outbuilding in the northeast area of the property.
All right.
So Mr. Chair, members of the DRB has to consider these setbacks, right, based on the criteria specified on that attachment B.
If it's helpful, I've got the DDO plan set and the agenda up. We can pull both of them up on the screen and go through the three decision items line by line.
And Mr. Chair, members of the DRB, I just noticed we have now with us Georgia Pennington and Nicholas Rose from zoning. I guess you guys are here to help us out with the DDO appeal.
Yeah. Hi, good morning, DRB. I also have Mark Castro with me in my office. He's having some technical difficulties this morning, so we're sharing computers. He's going to be the point person for zoning comments this morning.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mark.
Maria, do you mind if I share my screen? I've got the additional information about the case.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. There we go. Hopefully that's large enough. It seems Maureen has her hand up. Maureen, so the moment for public comment has elapsed. I'll let Chris take the lead on that. But
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to allow some time within while we're talking about the case to have that kind of mix it in a little bit, but I was going to allow that for this case.
okay. Well, she does have her hand up.
Yep, I'm not there yet.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, let's review the exact setbacks they want per property boundaries, so we're clear.
Okay. So if you're looking at my screen, I've got the entire parcel illustrated with the two structures on it. The plans depict with this dash line here, the 20-foot setback from the north property line, as well as the 20-foot setback from the east property line. The zone RX2 has a larger setback requirement than, for instance, R1 or R2 would typically. The first item approved was that DDO approval to allow the north perimeter yard setback to be reduced from 20 feet to 1 foot 6 inches, which is depicted
Right there.
right here. Yeah. So the building extending into the north 20-foot setback area. And items 2 and 3 were the reduced setbacks for the metal building here on the north side, both the 4 foot 6 inch setback to the north of the metal building and the 8 feet 4 inch setback for the metal building to the east property line. And so these three items are up for consideration.
And these are existing structures.
They are existing structures. The workshop structure and the metal building both existed at the time of the property owner's purchase of the property. They were apparently put up at some time in the past by the previous property owner without permits. This is a post hoc permitting of the existing structures. The intent of DDOs and other variance procedures is that modifications are allowed if the modification request is not for something that's self-imposed. So if you have a self-imposed non-compliant structure, then you can't get a DDO. But if you were to purchase a property and it has something that wouldn't meet, for instance, dimensional standards at the time of purchase, in the post hoc permitting of those structures, an applicant or property owner can apply for that design development option, because since the property existed in a non-conforming status at the time of purchase, it is not a self-imposed.
Right.
It's not self-imposed. Yeah.
Right. And the process that this property is going through currently is they're looking to bring these two existing structures up to current permit code
Well, they're
standards.
requesting modification of the dimensional standards through the DDO process, which is allowed based on the fact that it was not a self-imposed condition.
Correct. But the trigger for this is this property owner is bringing both of these structures up to current code and with not dimensional standards, just internal electric code and building code,
That is
other
correct.
standards. Correct.
So he's doing like the fire rated walls and everything for the
Correct.
reduced setbacks to the north,
So
bringing
that's-
everything up to code. And it will be inspected by the city based on the plan submitted.
Correct. I just wanted to put that on the.
Okay, this modification does not.
So if it pleases the board, we can go through line by line in areas where it's not immediately clear on the plans. I can provide some comment.
So this is what I'd like to do. If so typically with like our normal cases, we would we'd have a kind of more of like a presentation by the applicant of like what the project is and why they want to within what they're trying to achieve and how they meet the goals and standards that we typically hold for a project criteria we look at, and that's what we're going to move through here. But I think at this time I'd like to give Maureen that call to the audience time. And Maureen, I'm gonna hold you to 2 to 3 minutes if we can, maximum, which is what we would normally do for a call to the audience. But I wanted to have that as part of kind of this while we're discussing this case, and we have it up on the screen. And if I could, I'd ask you to stay within the kind of the bounds of what we're discussing, which is space and setbacks and
Okay,
and
I can go.
since you're really the one bringing this case to us with the appeal.
Yeah.
I want to give you a couple minutes to voice that.
All right. My name is on the appeal, but I'm not alone in this. There are other neighbors that feel this way. To begin with, I wasn't aware of the metal building number 2 at all. I didn't know it existed. I've physically been in building 1 because I had done business with the previous owner, who was a blacksmith of sorts. And to call it a workshop is being exceedingly generous. It's a lean-to, it has no floor, it has no structural support, and it has grown substantially since 2008 based on photos from Google Earth and the Tucson GIS. So, and it's not 743 square feet. I've been inside the building, and it's maybe the size of my garage, which is 390 square feet, but the previous owner appears to have maybe put metal roof that bridges the lean-to some other area. And so when you look at an aerial, it looks like it's a larger building. So by approving the DDO, you're not only making the matters worse, you're compounding it because you're letting him take a shed and turning it into a substantial structure. We have big lots in Richland Heights, and everyone has a shed. I have a shed, 2x3. So if this is allowed, we're going to see more and more people, and most people's sheds are on the property line because the property line fence helps support them, and which is exactly what this one did, and then leading it into the house. So it just feels like it's an illegal building. It has grown as an illegal building since the current owner has lived in the area, because he owns property across the street and on either side of his house as well. So it sets a really bad precedent if this is allowed to go through for our neighborhood, because we're already coming up with the ADU standards that are taking our setbacks to 5 or 6 feet. And this is it just seems very, very wrong.
All right. Thank you for that.
Oh, can I just say one more thing? I had talked to Mark, and Mark says that the design review board typically does not go to the property. Is that correct?
We do not know.
And but your code enforcement took some very good pictures of the structure, and you can see from the outside of it, you can see light coming in from the other side. So you know that the structure is not 743 square feet. I'm sure once improved, it will be, and because I've seen the plans to improve it, but you're taking an illegal structure and then letting it be expanded based on, it seems to be the wrong formula. So, and now I'm done.
Thank you.
Hey, Chris, can I ask a clarifying question? I guess of Gabriel or Nick, is the proposal to expand the existing structure or to permit what's currently built on the site?
So the proposal is to permit what's currently existing on site. I just pulled up a Google Maps just to check the existing conditions. And it came out to about 750, 760 square feet, but that's, I don't know where the original building exterior wall was, but the size on the plans seems to roughly corroborate with what's available on Google. Currently, the city GIS is down, so I can't pull up historical imagery through that. But this is I think this is a couple years old here, and so they're not with the submitted plans proposing to add anything to the structure, just to bring it up to building and fire code in order to make sure it doesn't present a hazard.
I have a question. When did the current property owner buy the property?
That
Do we know that?
Mr. Chair and members of the board, this is Mark Castro. I believe the property owner, and we do have the property owner here in attendance, Mr. Dan Taylor. Yep, he just put his hand up there. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but I believe he purchased this property somewhere 2022 or 2023.
Correct. Yeah.
Mark, I want to hold off on direct questions of that nature. Dan,
sure.
If I didn't see Dan jump on. If Dan's the property owner, I would like to give him the same space I allowed Maureen to have on this. Not that we're in a court of law or any other judicial type thing, but if he's associated with this case, I'd like to give just a couple minutes of open time, address the board, and then questions and comments after will be between the board staff and between board and staff. Is that
Very
acceptable,
good.
Dan?
Absolutely. I appreciate it. My name's Dan Taylor. Lived in Tucson my whole life and this neighborhood for 23 years. I own 4 houses in the neighborhood. I purchased Mr. Berryhill's property across the street somewhere in 2022 and proceeded to start to clean it up. Lovely human being, but he was a world-class hoarder. So I ended up taking out 3 roll-offs full of just garbage, and I'm still in the process of cleaning it up. The only thing I built was a fence. Everything existing on the plans that you see there has been measured and drawn by an architect. I have 76 pages of engineering on that and the metal building in the back, which was mandated by the development services in order to get my permit. The claim that it has a dirt floor is false. It has a 6-inch thick slab with a 15-inch monopore contiguous footer. It's very well built. It's built out of solid steel. It's attached to the house. It has a urethane spray foam roof, which is contiguous from the house to the shed, to the workshop. I was just thrown into this by surprise about a month after I bought it from a visit from young code enforcement officer. And I was then just thrown in this mix of now trying to make it legal, which I've done. I got the DDO and we've got the drawings, and I've spent a lot of money and time to try to keep this shop in place. I also have, signed declarations from everybody on the street and all over the neighborhood that state that they approve it. They don't see any problem with it as built. And it is just that. I have no plans on making it an ADU. Actually, it would be impossible because it's attached to a straw adobe house, which I would have to cut a hole in order to make it some sort of livable unit. But it is a very well built shop, and I'm just trying to get into compliance. I don't have any plans on adding to it. But yeah, this has been a long process. It's, here we are 3 years down the line almost, and still going. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the way it's constructed or details about that. I do know it very well. Currently, it's just used as storage. I have plans to renovate this residence into a rental, which has been put on hold completely for the last 3 years. Now it just sits there because I'm in limbo with this whole process. So I would really like to improve upon the property and landscape and make it another nice place, as I've done 3 times over on this street. So definitely dedicated to this neighborhood. My whole life savings is in this neighborhood. So it's as important to me as anybody else, the quality and character of the neighborhood. Heavily invested. So I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if you'd like, I can go line by line, or we can proceed at your pleasure.
I would like to just start line from line, and we'll
Yep.
run through and
Okay, so the page I've got up here, attachment B, is attachment B to today's DRB agenda, general findings for design development option. There's a line-by-line checklist of items which the design review board can consider for a DDO appeal. That said, the first section, line item A, the proposal is not a request previously denied as a variance. This one was not denied a variance. Item B does not modify a conditional requirement or finding to determine whether the use should be allowed. This is still a residential use in the RX2 zone, and so it's not a request to allow a unpermitted use.
okay, let's hold on that. If it's called a workshop, is it being used for commercial business?
We don't believe so. And workshop, garage, people are allowed to have those. If he did want to use it for like a home occupation, that would require a PDSD director decision that would be based on the proposed use and conditions we've placed. Carol, you have your hand up?
Yes, if I recall correctly, the previous hearing we heard on this, there was concerns given about this workshop being used as a company garage or something like that. Do I remember that right? That the construction vehicles will be in and out. Am I correct? And am I remembering that correctly?
Potentially, but that's also, I guess, Carol, that's if it's not being requested to be used as a commercial entity within our paperwork with what's being officially noted. I mean, the rest of that's kind of hearsay, in my opinion.
PDSD has approved it as a residential use.
It's okay.
Yeah,
So
it's going to be a hobby
is
shop. If it starts being used as a commercial property, that's a whole nother
right.
complaint.
May I ask the applicant, the owner of the property, point blank, will you be running your commercial trucks in and out of the property?
No, currently we're parking a trailer. I have some equipment parked in the back. We pull the trailer in and out twice a day, or once in the morning and once in the afternoon. That's temporary as I'm trying to get this thing fixed up as a rental. But no, that is not my intent for this property. It's not big enough. I don't conduct any commerce here. My business address isn't here. We don't do any fabricating here. I don't have meetings here, so it is not used for that purpose at all. And that's not my intent. My intent is to make it a nice rental and just keep it as part of the rentals that I have next door across the street.
Thank you.
Item D, findings
C.
that the, we're on C, is not to a condition of approval for a rezoning or special exception land use application. This is not, there's no request for
Right.
rezoning. It's a residential use, there's no special exception requirement. Item D does not modify a requirement of an overlay zone such as scenic corridor, environmental resource, major streets and routes, or airport environs. This isn't in any overlay zones, so none of these would apply to this property.
Okay.
Item E does not result in deletion or waiver of a UDC requirement. No, this does not result in the deletion or waiver. Right, this is strictly for the setback reductions, which are allowed under the provisions of the DDO. F,
And it's just asking for a modification of those requirements, not a total deletion or waiver of those requirements, correct?
Right. It's a modification for a condition that's not self-imposed, which is the DDO is appropriate
Thank you.
measure for that. F, the modification applies to property that cannot be developed in conformity with the provisions of this chapter due to physical circumstances or conditions such as irregular shape, narrowness of lot, exceptional topographic conditions, or location. This refers to those non-self-imposed conditions. If somebody was to purchase a property that doesn't provide the adequate space to meet dimensional standards, the DDO approval process can mitigate some of those issues. But it doesn't apply to this project.
Correct. Well, it kind of does, in that the real trigger of this application is that the owner wants to improve the existing structures to current code, which is a circumstance of the property condition. Correct.
Right. Typical application to F would be if I was to buy a lot and it turned out it was too narrow to meet the side yard setback requirements. This is slightly different in that there's no proposal of new construction, just to bring the current structure up to code without modifying the footprint.
Correct.
Item G does not create a situation where proposed development substantially reduces the amount of privacy enjoyed by nearby residents any more than would be available if the development was built without the modification. It meets height requirements for the zone. PDSD findings are that it doesn't pose any privacy issues, and as the property owner indicated, neighbors have raised no issues. Direct neighbors have raised no issues with the construction.
I have a direct question about this one. This is the one that caught my eye.
Me too, Chris.
Are there any windows on either of these structures?
If we're talking about the workshop and the shed, I assume you're
Those are the only two things we're talking about.
Okay. Yeah. No, there are no windows.
So they're solid walls looking at adjacent neighbor properties.
There are solid walls adjoining adjacent neighbors. Yes, there are no windows.
Okay. Carol, do you have a conversation point here? You said you had a question about this.
It's hard for me to differentiate what is going to be allowed because it was existing. When I look at the overall site plan, if we could go back to that, there is plenty of room on the site to rebuild elsewhere. But I get stuck with the fact that it was an existing condition. So, but I wonder what happens to the idea of buyer beware? of properties. And
Right.
that we can't consider that, right, Chris?
Yeah, I don't think that's part of our purview. It's
Right.
the house was purchased as is, right? But what we're on right now is privacy. So
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
So
right.
buyer
Okay.
beware, since this is, it's not self-imposed. A property owner purchases any outstanding conditions with the property, and the permitting and DDO process is to mitigate those issues for the property owner so that he can continue to develop it as he wishes.
correct.
If they wish. Mr. Chair, would you like to proceed?
Hold on one second. We're on G, right? So is there any other issues with privacy? Letter G.
Let me ask you this. Is this entire property enclosed with a CMU wall, or what is the, no, okay, so it's open on the south side. It is, I am thinking about the wildlife corridors, and a 1.5 foot setback is very narrow.
Right. So this isn't a mapped wildlife corridor or species management area. The purview of the design review board is strictly the approved modification to dimensional standards. And this is, again, this is not a condition created by the applicant. It's a pre-existing condition, which the DDO process is to bring into compliance.
Gabriel, I do have a question on the same. Is there, can we get clarification of what that fence material is on the north and the east side of the property? Is it opaque, 6 foot?
Based on the plan sets, block wall north of line in the front, and then a wood fence over on the northeast or in the rear of the property. The plans indicate a metal fence running along the southern property line.
So in the conversation about privacy, the complaint specifically mentioned sound. Is that something that we should discuss?
No, that wouldn't be within the purview of the DRB, and surrounding neighbors haven't indicated any issues with noise. In fact, we have a document with signed statements from neighbors indicating that they're all fine with it. It hasn't presented a nuisance to the adjacent properties.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, we can proceed, or?
I think I'm good. Yeah. H.
Okay. H does not create a situation where proposed development will block visibility within visibility triangles and adjoining streets. This is mid-block. The existing structures, yeah, they don't block any visibility.
Yeah.
Item I does not create a situation where the proposed development will cause objectionable noise, odors, trespass, lighting, or adverse impacts. Again, neighbors indicate that they're fine with the property. There's nothing in the plan set or description of residential use that would generate any of those. If somebody living there did want to use it as some sort of home occupation space, a condition of that approval would be assurances that no noxious conditions would be created as a condition of that approval or use as a home occupation. But again, that is outside the purview of the DRB today. Item J does not create a situation where the development will result in an increase in the number of residential dwelling units or square footage of non-residential buildings greater than would occur if the development was built without the modification. There's no proposed increase in the number of units on the property.
I have a couple of questions on these two, so we're gonna have some discussion here, Gabriel. Go ahead, Carol.
Well, you might be covered this. Okay, if the owner wants to use it as a rental unit, just double checking, is that increasing the number of residential units? Where does that fall?
No, so there's currently one unit on the parcel. It's the house. I believe Yeah, so adding workshop space to a house doesn't increase the number of units. The only way to increase the number of units by right on this property would be the construction of an accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah, but the owner said that he's intending to create a rental unit.
I don't
as
believe
the
it's owner
workshop.
occupied. No, so the plans don't propose using the workshop as a rental unit. It wouldn't meet the requirements for a dwelling. So that would end up creating a code enforcement issue.
That would create a what, Gabriel?
That would create like a code enforcement minimum standards of habitability issue.
ADU.
Yeah, the ADU would be the only way to increase the number of units. Currently, there's one unit, and there's no proposal to increase those units.
Yeah, but in
I believe
today's
the rental is the rental unit is referring to the entire property. That's
Correct.
that is,
Carol, he's looking to rent this entire thing as a single
okay,
occupant.
sorry, got it. Thank you.
My point on this is that we're still calling it a workshop on a rental property. Is this space intended to be habitable? Not as an accessory dwelling unit, but as a separate bedroom or as an extension of the existing unit.
Is that question directed towards me?
It would be at staff.
Okay.
so there's no plans for any kind of conditioning of the space based on the property owner submittal.
It's not connected to the air conditioning or heating of the main dwelling.
I don't believe so. And whether it is or is not, that wouldn't have any bearing on the request to reduce the setbacks of an existing structure. Right, like if in the future he wanted to convert it into a bedroom, or the property owner would like to convert it into a bedroom, that would be, there wouldn't be any zoning restrictions on doing so.
But it does directly apply to item J, in my opinion.
It is not.
Weird. Increase the number of residential dwelling units or the square footage.
So a bedroom is not by itself a dwelling unit. A dwelling unit is considered a structure with.
Sorry, I'm reading it incorrectly. It's or square footage of non-residential buildings greater than would occur in the development was built without the modification.
Right. So the maximum lot coverage, I believe, here is 70 or 75%. And so the house plus garage / workshop plus metal building, they don't exceed that.
Correct. So item J is really about lot coverage.
It's about lot coverage and additional units. This one doesn't.
Correct.
And I believe Mark or Nick have their hand up.
Right. So I just want to clarify, we're not creating an additional dwelling unit, which would be item J. We're not increasing the number of residential dwelling units on this property, and we're not increasing the square footage of this structures to beyond the maximum square foot coverage of the lot allowed in this zoning.
Correct.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, members of the DRB, Mark, I would like to request Mark Castro to clarify for us.
Correct. Yes, I was heading there right now, Maria. Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Yes, I'd like to provide clarification on item J. What that is intended to be, it's sort of, you can call it a fail-safe. So for example, if someone was constructing a building on the property and it was intended to be a residential use, like in other words, like a separate unit, the purpose of this item is to ensure that they're doing it by right in the zone. So if it required a rezoning, or if they're doing a commercial project where it's exceeding the square footage and it's something that's not allowed in the zone, that's what this item is intended for. So it's meant to say, if you're going to do a residential dwelling unit, it has to be allowed in the zone, and it doesn't require a rezoning. So that's really the intent of that item. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I just want to jump back to I real quick and looking at the plans. Is there any exterior lighting proposed on this workshop that is not existing currently? Staff should be able to answer this one. I don't have the plans open in front of me.
Yeah.
I don't have split
Probably.
screens today.
Mark is probably more familiar, but I don't believe so.
Let's see. I don't believe this one has exterior lighting on these additions.
I just wanted to make sure that that light bleed through being this close to a property line would be something I'd be concerned about as far as neighbor. Board, are there any other topics or concerns about any items A through J? Okay, hearing none. Gabriel, we can move on to section 311 1D2.
Can do.
I have a feeling we have to go through these A through F, correct?
Yes. So the second section here on the page, so in addition to the findings in the first section, the director shall find in the case of setback and wall height only that the modification A does not create a situation where proposed development will obstruct significant views of dramatic landforms, unusual stands of vegetation, or parks from nearby properties substantially more than would occur if the development were built without modification. And that has not been our finding.
We don't have that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Item B provides design alternatives to better integrate the development to the design character of the immediate neighborhood.
That would be subjective, isn't it?
Yeah, it's subjective. I think that's and Mark can correct me if I'm wrong, but the application of a DDO in a case like that is if somebody wanted to build something.
It's for new proposed structures.
Yeah, that's for new builds, or if there's a street with a lot of like attached carports within the front yard setback, then that would be.
I would wager on this part of our purview would be the criterion of, is it staying within, it's not a 2-story structure being tacked on, that was tacked on to a 1-story house. So we don't have that really. Roof lines, construction style, things like that are.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
In conjunction with neighboring, it's not something that's different or causing break from the neighborhood building typology.
Well,
other than its location, right? If it was shifted over 4 feet or 8 feet, if it was within the bounds, this would not be something that is dramatically different than the rest of the neighborhood.
Can you swing around with your street view camera again? Because I don't see other structures that look like the structure we're talking about.
So using the street view, there are a number of structures in the immediate area that are also built with substandard setbacks. If those ever became part of a code complaint or an issue was raised by a neighbor, they would have to go through the DDO process as well. And
I'm not only referring to setbacks, I'm looking at architectural styles, Gabriel.
Right. So there are no architectural standards or requirements in this neighborhood. It's not an NPZ or HPZ.
It's a very mixed architectural style, like throughout this neighborhood. There's no consistent typology.
Mr. Chair, would you like to proceed?
I think so, yes.
Okay, C does not apply to a setback requirement of a flexible lot development. There's no FLV.
Can we switch screens, Gabriel? Can we switch back to the list?
Oh, right. Here we go. So yeah, this isn't part of a flexible lot development or residential cluster project type development area. And so that's like if I bought a property in an FLD with
right.
its own setback requirements, I couldn't use this to modify them. D does not create a situation where proposed development interferes with optimum air temperature or solar radiation orientation of buildings on adjoining properties. Substantially more than would occur if the buildings were built without the modification. We don't believe that's the case, and no adjacent neighbor has indicated any kind of concern with that.
Well, let's hold off on that one because that's really kind of I think the criteria for a setback, right? Is the intent of a setback is to create separation between properties to allow air, temperature, water, fire safety, things of that nature, right, between buildings. I'd like some clarification on this. Is the height of this structure significantly higher than the adjacent fencing?
Not significantly, and so the reasoning for setbacks is also subjective, right? Because there are desirable neighborhoods that have zero line setbacks and row houses, and so as long as things are built up to building code standards for the applicable setback, then
Could we go to
Gabriel,
the elevation drawings? Let's look at
I'd
that
posit-
closely.
I'd push back on that statement a little bit,
Yeah.
Gabriel, in that the zoning within this neighborhood was set up in a way that the setbacks are set so that they create a space and a density, visual density between neighbors. There's a reason that that's that way, and that zero lot line neighbors zonings
Yeah,
are
there we
set
go.
up their way.
Okay, so
My question is more about the solar orientation, right? Carol, that's what you're asking about also, is that elevations are within the building?
yes,
We
yes,
know the
yes,
height of
Chris.
the building versus the height of the fence.
this is the metal shed behind the primary structure. We
And
have
we're looking at the west elevation of that building, right?
Correct.
What is the proposed elevation height?
10 to 8 to 10. One single story with a 6-foot fence adjacent.
So, okay. Yeah, that's right. We're not on the metal building, we're on the workshop.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Wow, that's a lot. It's significantly higher. It's not at all what is existing.
This is all existing, Carol.
the house is 12 feet, and the workshop addition is 10 feet high at its peak. And again, it's also it's not inconsistent with existing structures in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Okay.
This project is confusing to me. Sorry.
And then the shed in the back is more consistent with the shed, 8 to 10 feet.
Yeah,
Right.
8
8 feet 4 inches
okay.
at its peak.
Okay.
Well, that's,
Which again is consistent with the existing neighborhood.
So the workshop is 12 feet, gonna be
10
12
feet.
feet, 10
The
feet.
house is 12 feet. So the original dwelling is 12 feet. The workshop addition is 10 feet at the peak. And the detached metal shed is 8 feet 4 inches at its peak.
Now, was that the building that was purchased at the time of, in existence at the time of the purchase by the current owner?
That's correct. So the DDO can't be utilized to modify a condition that the owner creates, right? But because this was an existing, these were existing structures at the time of property purchase. This is not a request to modify the standards for a self-imposed condition.
Jesus.
I'm still concerned about this one, just from the statement of it. It doesn't have a percentage or a qualifier of solar orientation. If this,
That wouldn't, so that
if
wouldn't
the-
be something
if the
we normally
workshop
look at.
itself had been built to setbacks that are part of
Right.
that are existing on that site or that were required on that site, it wouldn't be blocking any light that went into the neighbor's property.
Right.
Currently being approximately 2 to 2.5 feet higher than the existing fencing on that site within 1 foot of that fence.
Right. So the neighbor's property also has some structures and shade
I
sails.
don't care about the neighbor's structures.
Right.
We're
Yeah.
not talking about those right now.
Right.
What I'm talking about is that this 2 feet above the adjacent fencing within 1 foot of it blocks solar orientation to that adjacent property. Whether it's blocking it significantly, adversely, or creating an adverse condition is not quantified in either of any of these documents. So I want to move on from this point to get through the first round of these, but that is something that is catching my attention. And
Yeah. Yes, Chris, I thank you for pointing that out.
Mr. Chair, members of the DRB, I would like to ask Mark Castro again for some clarification on this item.
I would too.
Thank you,
Mark?
Maria. Yep, thank you. I just want to mention and reiterate that this, yes, this structure has been in existence since maybe around, yeah, for several years. 2002, I think, is when the original structure was built, and then subsequently, 2010 and 2012 additions were made to the structure to what you see now. And just for a point of clarification, and just to be aware, since that time, since these structures were built, there has been no reported complaints or violations. So there hasn't been an impact on the north adjacent property owner that felt that it was, too close to the property or, impacting any kind of vegetation or anything like that. So I think with this item, I don't think there's any impacts to what is currently existing.
And Mr. Chair, members of the DRB, talking about the structure that is adjacent, abutting the existing house, to the property to the north, that's a driveway, and that structure, that red roof that you see, it's the carport of that adjacent property. So again, that's up to the DRB, but if the concern is about reducing solar light or airflow to the adjacent property, adjacent on the other side of the fence, it's a driveway and carport, which is, they selected not to have any light and any light from the sun going into their driveway.
Respectfully, Maria, I really have zero concerns on what's going on the adjacent property.
Yeah, because
That condition is changeable, and
correct.
the condition we're about to approve is not changeable.
Correct.
And that's just a concern of mine. I'm not saying this is something that is a major concern of mine, but I want to make sure we're factual and we know exactly what each of these items is for and where we stand on them. Can we move on to E?
Certainly. Item E does not create a situation where the proposed use of a property will impose objectionable noise levels on adjacent properties greater than would occur if the buildings or structures were built without the modification. Again, there's no request for a home occupation, and any kind of request for home occupation in this space would require approval by the PDSD director. City of Tucson has ordinances governing noise impacts for residential areas. And if anything did come up in the future where noise was creating a negative impact, code enforcement would be the right avenue to address those. But currently, as proposed, there's no issues with this item.
Right. I understand there's no current complaints about the use of the site. I have some concerns with this one slightly also, that it's, if this was a workshop,
I believe
if it
the
was
previous
per,
one
if
was
this
a black
if this workshop was built per the required setbacks, it would be farther away from a neighbor's property. So the level of noise that travels to the neighbor's property is increased by having it adjacent than it would be if it was 20 feet away.
And, well, I know the code enforcement would come into play, but in the future, what will be the use of the workshop? It could change.
Even that, Carol, I'm kind of thinking that we're looking at the creation of situation, right? That the structure itself, or how it's used, or what's being done inside is irrelevant, right? It's the thought I just had is, if this is 20 feet farther away from where it is currently, inherently that has more of a sound buffering. There's less noise and less impacts to an adjacent property than if it's directly adjacent, correct?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's my take on this one. I don't want to dwell on it too hard, but I think that's it. Just because there's no current complaints, or I don't know what kind of agreement the prior owner had with the adjacent neighbor, or what that relationship is. That's not within.
Right.
If that was something we needed to take into consideration, that would be within the text we're looking at, right? So that's another concern I have. Are there any other talking points from the board on letter E? F.
F, the modification is not for an increase in height of more than 2 feet to an accessory wall or fence, except that up to 4 feet may be considered for entry features on walls and fences. This structure, I believe at its peak, is 10 feet. I'm not sure what the wall height is at the edge.
It may match the other side that says 8'7".
Oh, yeah.
Oh, thank you, Paige. Yeah.
Good eye.
Yeah.
I think Mark raised hand.
Mark to clarify on this point.
Yep. I just want to clarify. Item F is referring to DDOs that have to do with request to increase the height for a wall and fence. So in this case, we're just the matter before the board is just the building setback. So F would not apply.
Okay.
Correct.
Oh, brother.
Is that the end of our criterions?
That's correct. That's the end of the list.
Okay. So board, I'd like to have a quick conversation, move through if there was any strong objections or strong points within any of these that we found that we need to have discussion on.
Well, I think one of the strongest ones is the solar aspect of it. What was that you brought up, Chris?
It's the second section, item D, and
thank
section 311(1) D1, letter D and letter E were the two that caught my eye as wanting to have discussion on. So I made the points I made. Um, and they were more from the point of view as if this was a new structure or a proposed new development that had ability to readjust. Like if we were proposing a new shed that was too close to the property line, and they had the option of pushing it away. This is not that condition. So I'd like to get some point of view from the rest of the board on solar and sound, dealing with a existing structure. You know, the improving this to current code, which is what the applicant is, or the original application to development services was to take an existing footprint and just put new, better walls, better soundproofing, better insulation, a new electric cabinet, things of that nature to make this thing a much more usable site or usable product. Does that action create a different solar condition or a different sound condition, noise condition? That's what I think we're really talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure it does. The current structure inherently would be louder, in my opinion.
Right.
Putting a fire rated wall and new electricity and some new roofing materials on this inherently improves the condition and usability of this space. Is that?
Yeah, you know, when we see other DDOs, I'm thinking specifically like landscape ones that have come through, there's a a modification requested, and then there's often like a concession made or some sort of they're meeting us at a higher standard for something in order to reduce and modify the requirements elsewhere. So I wonder if that could be applied here. You know, we are closer to the property line, but like you're saying, we're better insulated, or we're closer to the property line, but where the roofing material is improved to reflect less heat, or kind of looking at it from that perspective.
Yeah.
I would think that would be if there was a condition we could, a situation we could add conditions to. That might be something I would think this board would be in favor of. Would be yes, this is a great project to do, or where the setbacks are what they are. Is there an opportunity to request additional soundproofing on that north wall? Staff, is there an option for us to provide that in feedback?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Can you repeat the question? I missed that.
Is there an opportunity within this approval or disapproval of this DDO to provide a condition that we would request additional, you know, for example, soundproofing in the north, or additional insulation to provide additional sound buffering on the north wall for the improvements that are being proposed?
As long as the condition is related to the building setback, like for instance, in previous DDOs, you know, close to the property line, we've done like, instead of a chain link fence, okay, let's make it an opaque fence or something like that. So as long as it's related to the building setback, in this case, you're talking about increasing or you're adding some more insulation, so it provides some kind of sound buffer.
Yeah, a little more sound abatement to directly address that letter E.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly a condition you could recommend if that's how the board feels that it would address one of those items.
Carol, did you have a point to make?
Yeah, well, I just want to add some information, I live in Savannah. The east side of my house is 0 lot line, and it is indeed an entire firewall as per code. And I hear a lot of sound through it, even though it's a firewall. So just for your information, firewalls do not abate sound.
Just fire.
Just fire.
Hence the name firewall.
Right, just fire. So the thought to add conditions for further noise abatement is, I think, valid. Oh,
Are there any comments or thoughts on that point from board? I think I might be trying to lean on our architecture representatives.
The firewalls in general do provide better sound attenuation than standard building construction, I'd say, but just by the nature of
Correct.
it's a thicker.
right, but they don't abate it.
I'm wondering. I'm kind of wondering, Grace, is there, just for conversation's sake, is there maybe an insulation change or an insulation type change within a firewall that may provide? I don't want to recommend or make a comment or a condition on something that's not obtainable, or that would be adversely attainable to or adversely impacting to the project. But requesting something that would triple cost or adversely
I
impact
think
the ability to provide the project, right?
we're starting to get into like an STC rating for the wall, and is that something that the inspector is going to measure, or something that we need to get inspected? I think that
Correct.
does add a complication to it that's possibly unnecessary. My question, I don't know if staff has the answer to this. With the buildings or the plans here are saying we're providing hat channels with gypsum board for a fire rated wall. What's the existing construction of that wall? Do we know?
I don't know if Mark has
I think I'll refer that to Mr. Taylor.
I'll let Dan answer that question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, the existing construction is steel with 5/8 plywood PDX and drywall over the top of that. In addition, the entire roof is insulated top and bottom, 2 inches of rigid foam underneath, and between 3 to 5 inches of isonine spray foam on the lid on the top. So there's already considerable sound mitigation in the building. Mr. Berryhill was fond of grinding things. It was understood by the neighbors that was part of the deal. So yeah, it's already pretty well insulated. But to answer your question directly, the firewall section is already steel, plywood, and gypsum.
This is more of a code or a building plan review question, but you have a UL listed assembly for this one. Does it include insulation? In order to meet that 1 hour requirement, I assume that's something that they're asking of you.
I can't remember I looked at the plans yesterday. I can't remember what that fire rating wall with the cross section looked like.
Was it included? I didn't see one, but I may have missed it.
Are you all familiar with rock wool?
yeah,
Yes.
the fiberglass insulation. There's also
It's great for acoustics. I've used
Right.
it for a
So that-
sound studio.
so that wouldn't be. So that's not something we would look at for other residential projects for accessory structures like this. And it's not something that, to my knowledge, we've looked at for previous similar DDO requests for residential use.
This isn't for residential use though, Gabriel. This is for a workshop
So
attached to a residential use, right?
So the residential use, I mean, that describes the land use for the
Correct.
parcel,
I
right?
understand what you're saying.
Yeah, they would still need to meet, city ordinances concerning sound propagation.
Okay.
So if there were any issues with that, their code enforcement and further permitting would be the avenue for mitigating any new complaints from the neighbors.
As far as we know, the workshop isn't built out with any sort of equipment, right? I mean, I'm wondering if we're getting caught up on the language used on the plan here when that could be storage. It could be any, as far as the person who rents the property, their use of it, we wouldn't know.
That's correct. I mean, it's
Correct.
indicated as workshop on the plans, but that's not really describing a use. The use would still be residential, and it could be used for, like you said, a number of different things that don't create any noise impacts.
Or do create noise impacts. We don't know.
Right.
Yeah,
But I mean, if I started practicing like my drums in my carport, that would be something that, for example, that's something that, there's avenues for my neighbors if they were like, hey, man, cut it out. And I was like, nah, dude. There's avenues for them to get that addressed, right? And so there's nothing on the proposal and there's nothing in the proposed use that indicates it would create anything. If they wanted to do a home occupation, either the owner or the tenant, that would need to get approval from the PDSD director, who, if there were any concerns regarding sound attenuation, could be conditional at that time with that approval.
Right. So, board, I want to bring us back to that, to the verbiage of that point. Is this improvement, which the improvement we're really discussing is bringing this current structure up to current codes, is that improvement in its location creating a sound or a noise challenge? And I think through this discussion, the point I wanted to ask really, or get to with that, was what the existing condition is versus the proposed improved condition. And from it being a plywood and gypsum wall to now becoming a fire rated wall, that pretty much remedied my concern that whether it's 1% less or 10% less sound moving through that wall it's not part of the criteria. But I do believe that by improving this wall to a fire rated wall, sound travel through that wall will be less than what the current condition is. Does that make sense, Grace?
Yes, yeah. And kind of what I was getting at with the use is if we're having that conversation about the workshop, we could easily use the metal building as a workshop too. So
yeah, I'm not really hung up on what the actual, in my opinion, I'm not hung up on what someone's going to be doing inside that space. It's more the physical structure, the built material, how it impacts its height, like whatever someone does in there is their purview. But whether or not that sound travels through the walls is, they put store boxes in there. There's no sound at all.
I agree with I agree with your point about the bringing it up to code being we're ending up in a better condition than we were before in terms of
correct.
the criteria here.
And that's really, I think, the underlying theme of what we're trying to do is this structure in its current location creating an adverse effect on the adjacent property, and is the improvement of this in its existing space creating an adverse impact on the adjacent properties, right? That's ultimately our purview. And we're determining that through a list of, 20 criterion. And the only two that I found a hiccup on were solar application and sound, right? So unless anyone has any others, I think I've been personally in my position on this board, I'm okay with where with this thing as it stands. Is there any other concerns or conversation? Paige, you got anything you have concerns with?
I do not. Thank you.
Grace, are you okay with do you have any others that you would answer no to? Because this was an answer yes to all, and it approves, or answer no to at least any of them, and it is a not approved.
No, I agree with you. I think it's good. Good to
Carol?
go.
I am not comfortable with approving this. There are too many unknowns for me to feel comfortable with an approval of this, so my vote will be no.
Would you like to see if some of those unknowns can be remedied? What unknowns specifically are you waffling on?
The use of the workshop. We haven't even talked about the use of the metal building. I don't understand. I mean, I know it's existing, but one of my thoughts, okay, for the workshop, can we at least ask that the north elevation be pulled back to at least the same distance as the metal building, a 4'6"? I know it's existing, it'd be a rebuild, but I just see this as a can of worms, slippery slope, and it is only to accommodate a wrong, unfortunately, that was somehow allowed to be sold as a wrong to the new owner. The whole thing seems wrong to me, Chris. I'm sorry.
There's nothing to be sorry about. That's why we're here, Carol, is to have these conversations and to make determinations, right?
Right. In good conscience, I know maybe all the rules allow this to happen, but I am not comfortable with that.
Right. So use of the structure, what they are as far as their use isn't necessarily part of the decision process here within this. We're really just talking about physical location, right?
Right. But
so
the physical location will be impacted by the use. You know, it's
and that can be handled separately under the purview of this the original application, and now the appeal of that approval is purely about location.
Correct.
And so and something like a rebuild is would be really atypical for a DDO request. That would be
we can't really request rebuild, Gabriel, right? We can't give conditions like that, but we can say that this does not meet the criteria. And
right. So these three
Carol, that's where I'd like Carol to identify kind of which one of these of the items we went through were adverse enough to create the other than the point of that this was not up to code when it was first built, and therefore should not be allowed to exist.
Right.
Huh. All right. Okay. I'm very unclear as the use could change in the future. So noise. So I don't know what really bothers me, and there's no criteria by which to put this on, is the great reduction. The just because the building's in existence of this property line offsets. I mean, it was supposed to be 20 feet, and now it's 1'6" on the north, and at least it could be pulled back to create greater airflow, cooling, that kind of thing. And we're just allowing it to happen because because of a rule I don't agree with. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so
Just
part
because,
of the DDO,
because of the passage of time, right, Carol? That's the only reason we're contemplating this being here is because it's been here, right?
Right.
Is that
And
the
so
point you're making?
we're continuing to promote a wrong.
Correct.
That
I
doesn't seem
understand.
right to me.
So the DDO process is to, I mean, it's not a wrong, right? If you have an approved DDO, then it's, you know, by
I'll
interpretation of law,
rephrase
it's not a
Carol's thing.
wrong.
I'll rephrase Carol's point that we're perpetuating the building things in non-conformance of existing zoning codes.
Right. So looking at the surrounding area, which is something that would be considered for a DDO request, it's definitely not inconsistent with the placement of other accessory structures and carports, right? Like the property in question is this one right here. And even just on, you know, within the block and up and down the street, and other areas of the neighborhood, there's a lot of accessory buildings that don't meet that 20-foot setback requirement, right? And something, if those came up as part of a code enforcement complaint, then, you know, the property owners would have to go through the same process.
Right. And that doesn't bother me, actually, Gabriel. By us approving this, we're just perpetuating a wrong that's going to give a nice smooth ride slope for these other people to come in with the same DDO or whatever it's called. I
Right.
don't like the whole thing, you guys. I'm sorry. Yeah, the three of you, the rest of you can vote yes and it will pass, but I'm going to vote no.
And Maria, I don't know if you want to share, but at this point, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I have to step away to be on an interview panel. I think Mark's in the same position, so I'm going to have to stop sharing my screen. But
Maria can take over.
Yep, it's been a pleasure seeing you.
Thank you, Gabriel.
Yep.
Thank you, Gabriel.
Y'all have a good day.
Thank you for clarifying, Carol. I wanted to push you a little bit on bringing it back to this criteria list that we have, and or
Okay.
a larger concern you may have, so we could have a discussion on it if we wanted to.
Okay, let's look at D. Optimum air temperature, solar radiation orientation of the building at 1.5 feet away. If the property owner to the north wants to put in something, it's going to impact it.
That was a point I was catching on that. It's definitely creating an impact.
Yeah.
On
And Mr. Chair, members of the DRB, if then adjacent property owner would like to modify their existing carport that is also very close to that property line into some livable space, they would also need to go through permits and go through the DDO.
But Maria, it doesn't have to be a livable space. Maybe they want to put a nice big planting of plants that would help cool their area, but there's no, they don't have the solar radiation to allow it because of the 1.5 foot offset.
The required setback would be, the required setback per code would need to be 20 feet.
Right.
From the property line, unless they would like to be closer, and then they will need to go through some kind of variance or DDO.
But no, they can plant up to their property line with vegetation.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can go right to 0 with vegetation, and maybe they'll want to do that, but they wouldn't have the light in order for successful plant growth if the property to the south is 1.5 feet. It's just a can of worms, you guys. It's a bad can of worms.
The conditions or use on the adjacent property, I really don't care, to tell you the truth. It's the potential for or there's just the straight black and white of it. The adjacent fence, the property line fence is 6 feet tall, plus or minus. This structure is taller than that fence. It is creating additional shade and shadow on that adjacent property, no matter how you slice it or what they're going to do later.
Well, I could jump on that for sure if that holds water.
Well, it's creating additional shade and shadow on the adjacent property, right? No matter how we
I agree.
Is it adverse? I guess is the point I'm let's see the actual wording of that. I think there's an optimal is the word that is used in there.
Oh,
It's like, is it impacting optimal air and shade? Maria, can we get the A through E or A through J criterion list up? Okay.
yeah. With the
Interfere with the
optimum
optimal air
temperature.
temperature, solar radiation orientation of buildings on adjoining properties.
Yes, optimal. Yeah.
But it's not, I guess the
Oh.
point I'm looking at is it doesn't create,
Is the point
What's
you're
it-
thinking that the neighbor to the north couldn't do anything to collect solar radiation within 20 feet because she would have to go by the same criteria? Is that the thing? Or we don't care what happens? I don't know, you guys. It's a mess.
it's the one point that hasn't been resolved, but my concern really is if does it create a situation that's substantial or impacting optimal to the point of it not being optimum anymore. And I'm not 100% on that. I think I'm okay with that for this point. I think, Carol, your point of view is your point of view. You're not really relating it back to specific point on here, so I don't think going through these again is going to change your vote. Or
but what about this? The property to the north, it looks like a Ramada outdoor area, and maybe they enjoy the solar radiation into their property in the wintertime. And a 1.5 foot raise of the roof or whatever it is, I think it's about right, might impact their ability to sit in the sun in the winter on their south porch.
potentially.
I don't, yeah.
Can we hear from
I don't know
Nick?
if that.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This is Nick. Mark had to jump off with
Correct.
Gabriel for those interviews. So I do just want to point out, I mean, we are kind of getting into some hypotheticals here, right? And the structure that I think we're all, or you all are kind of debating here on whether or not it's impacting that northern property has been there for quite some time, right? So to date, we have not heard any complaints from that northern neighbor about any impact that structure has had on their property. And we did not receive any negative feedback when the DDO mailings went out from that property owner as well. So I did just want to make that known to the board.
True, and I understand that, and
Thank you.
the improvements that are being proposed are really within the existing framework of that structure, right? It's to bring it up to building code, other than the spatial requirements. So we're really just talking about space, where it's located. Okay.
What was the other point that maybe I had footing on, Chris? I know I really don't.
Well, no, you kind of do, but I think you were asking, or one of the points you made was bringing that north setback to align with the metal shed in the back, or at least hold them both to the same criterion, right?
Yes, a 4'6" instead of 1'6".
Right. It's really just a yes or no. Like I don't think we have the purview or the agency to say it needs to be X or Y. We can just say yes, we agree, or don't agree with the appeal. So to bring this back around, Carol, this was approved as a DDO prior.
Right, and
we're just here to say yes, we agree with that DDO, or the appeal that is currently where we agree with the appeal.
Yes, Maureen Pollock's appeal, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yes.
And I think I'm I know we're all stand, and we're probably not going to move on that position, or additional comments are likely not
Yeah.
going to change your point of view, Carol.
No,
Let's move on to a vote on this thing.
Yeah.
Or a motion at least.
so the motion on this would be to approve Maureen Pollock's appeal, to not allow it.
It would be to uphold the original,
Okay, so
modify or reverse the director's decision.
okay, thank you. So it's upholding the current allowance of the 1.5 foot setback on the north
Correct.
property line. Okay, all right. So it's not a vote it's not a vote for the appeal, but it's a vote to uphold. Thank you.
Uphold or reverse, which would be agreeable to the appeal. Right. The appeal is to reverse the existing standing decision.
Mr. Chair, members of the DRB, so the options the DRB has is to uphold, modify, or reverse the decision by the PDST director on the DDO, the original DDO application.
What is modify? What
I'm looking
parameters
at
are on that? That's a pretty giant word right now.
right. So it would be placing conditions. That's the way I interpret this. So there were no conditions on the DDO decision notice.
But we can place our conditions. Can we
You
do
can
that, Maria?
you can recommend conditions to be placed on a decision notice by the
And
PDST
Maria,
director.
correct me if I'm wrong. In the past on DDOs, we've had the option to make suggestions or conditions that changed maybe materials or density or some other like the example that was made of chain link fence to becoming an opaque fence, location, building material, other things that would be under development services purview for code related items are not or wouldn't be necessarily within that modification. That's how I interpret what we've done in the past as far as modify.
Yeah, for other cases, Mr. Chair, members of the DRB, where part of the purview is to review those type of items, materials, colors. But right now, the purview of the DRB is to focus on the approved DDO, which is about the setbacks.
Right.
Okay.
That's
So
just based on that and the criteria on attachment B. That's what the DRB has to review.
Right. So I wanted to
on.
clarify that a little. Like Carol, I don't think we have within our purview the ability to make a modification saying that wall needs to move.
I think we do. That's a modification. We could say modify from the current approval of 1'6" to 4'6" of the workshop. I think we could say that, Chris. Am I wrong?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the DRB, Ms. Kleiman, yeah, that you would be focused on the setback. So if the DRB feels that the setback should be different from the 1 foot 6 inches and the 4 foot 6 inches from the property line, the north property line, then the DRB can make that recommendation.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
So from a procedural point of view, if we were to say, reject it, it goes to Board of Adjustment, or reverse it rather, they agree. What's the impact of that? The owner would be required to remove the structure?
Modify the building. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Anthony, members of the DRB, again, the decision is made by the Board of Adjustment. So depending on the Board of Adjustment decision, then the applicant has the choice of modifying the site plan to show whatever conditions are placed by the Board of Adjustment, or you know, demolish the buildings, or just keep them the way they are. They're not a code violation at this point that is registered with the city. The property owner voluntarily came forward to try to make things right. He's in the, as I
Well, he
understood,
has
he's
to
in the
have
process of,
permits.
yeah, and that's what he's doing right now. He's
Yeah.
trying to, and
Okay.
he has the option of applying for a DDO to reduce the setbacks.
I think before we tread down this road, we need to understand what one of these criterion we would be asking Carol, if it, like, to labor your point directly. If we wanted to request our modification to be that the wall of that north wall that meet the same setback as the metal structure in the back, which one of these is that relieving? Is it the solar? Can we prove that relieves the solar?
Wait, don't go up to the top. I want to read, there was one at the top. Okay.
Yeah, Chris, I'm sorry. I was just speaking hypothetically. I wasn't intending to go down that road. I was just trying to understand the impact of one decision
Well, I
versus the
mean,
other.
but that's the discussion, right? Is if we Carol, the thing would moving it back to 4 foot off the wall, would that change your stance or your opinion or your vote here? Just not that we're putting on a vote, but is that
Okay,
the
can you,
setback?
yeah, I'm reading. Can you scroll down, please? I want to keep reading. I think it's that we're back to, okay.
It was letter E on the second section.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Ugh.
Where
was
D,
the solar stuff?
It's in letter D in this section.
Yeah, okay.
But I think I'm having pause on even having that discussion because we would have, the discussion would need to be that it creates to the point where it creates no solar impacts on the adjacent property. And that could be 4 feet, could be 6 feet. There's no criterion here that gives us that.
Do we have to give a criteria? Can we just say modify and leave to 4.6 and leave it at that?
But that's pretty arbitrary in my opinion.
Mr. Chair, if I could comment real quick on this. So you would, if you're intending to modify any of what's being proposed here or asked of the applicant, you do need to tie it specifically to one of the criteria listed. Okay. And I will point out, I hear you talking about kind of matching the other setback of the other accessory structure. That too is not meeting setbacks and is part of the request, right? So finding,
we're compromising.
Figuring out a setback somewhere in the, I mean, it is incredibly subjective. So you would need to, again, tie it to one of those criteria of the DDO findings. And this is, my personal opinion. I don't know that moving the building in any direction really changes anything, right? Because the request is still there for the other building.
Boy, where I want to go back to the original UDC design philosophies. I bet you we could find something there that are supposedly override any and all of this stuff.
Well, this is what the DDO is for, Carol's, to amend and give relief to the UDC, right? Because the UDC is calling out 20 feet. That's what.
But we could place our reasoning, because we feel a design philosophy of the UDC is, pardon the expression, trumping this request.
Yeah, right? I don't think that's in our purview, Carol. We have letters A through J or A through I and A through G.
Doesn't the UDC philosophy
the zoning in the UDC
clouts
is 20
over
foot setback.
Everything?
I think that's the UDC calls for different setbacks within these properties, and that's what they're asking for relief from those requirements.
based on UDC design philosophy of blah, 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 whatever
20
we
feet.
find. And we're not supposed to do that? That's
Right.
ridiculous. We can't go back to our very primary design criteria?
The design criteria they're not meeting them. That would be an immediate no if we did anything back to the UDC, in my opinion.
But we're we're compromising with it's like
That's
I
the
don't know.
point of a DDO, is to compromise.
Compromise.
And
Okay.
to provide modifications to the existing requirements under the UDC. That's the 100% the intent we're doing here. It's not conforming to the UDC. If we wanted to bring
Right.
the UDC back into this thing,
Right.
this would be a 4-minute conversation. It would be a fail. It would be a non-conforming structure. The design philosophy between the UDC is 20-foot setback on this north wall. That
Seems
is an
weird that we
inflexible
can't
line.
integrate those two together into a compromise. But
It's
whatever. Okay.
I'm ready
So-
to move away from this.
Yeah. Well, you guys
case.
are going to vote in favor. I'm going to vote against. So we'll just leave,
Right.
just be at that, because we can't modify unless we can. I think it was clear that we cannot modify without a real reason, without one of these.
Without
And
bringing it back directly to one of these criterion.
Yeah,
correct.
and we can't. So let's go ahead and you guys, somebody make the motion, I guess. And I'll vote again. Well, depending on what the motion is.
Let's see. I'll make the motion here. Design Review Board has reviewed the proposed design development option, recommends that the board adjustment uphold the director's decision to approve DDO-24-81, finding the application in compliance with the criteria established in UDC 3.11.1.d, point 1 and 2 as attachment B, subject to the following conditions. We have none.
I'll second the motion.
Grace seconds the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose?
I, Carol Clement.
So Maria, that's a 3 ayes, 1 nay.
Who voted name again?
Carol?
Take a guess.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, the motion passes 3-1.
All right. That was a lively discussion.
Thank you, Nick and Georgia, for joining, and Mark. I know he's not there anymore.
No problem. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, everybody.
This is another, number 6 is also another continuance. This was the de novo tap and market and tap at the Transamerica building.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I believe the DRB reviewed this case back in December, and I was not present there, so just give me a second. That was December 20th. And the case was continued by the DRB, and I have here the motion. Requested the applicant to return to the DRB with a revised submitted plans addressing accurate placement and species of trees to improve shade and compatibility, retain the current shade structure design to align with the building's established color scheme, incorporate thoughtfully design lighting to enhance safety and foster a more inviting and vibrant atmosphere during evening hours, confirmation of materials and colors consistent with renderings, coordination with the city to add public seating in the plaza area, clear integration of proposed and existing elements is updated in updated plans and elevations. That was the motion back in December. So the applicant has resubmitted the plans and those were provided to you. And one thing I must mention, Mr. Chair, members of the DRB, and let me go back to the notes. We had a discussion a couple of days ago with the zoning administrator trying to clarify some issues regarding shade. And so for this specific case, the zoning administrator let us know that the private patio spaces are not considered towards meeting shade requirements. That the shade requirement is to apply to public and semi-public spaces. And outdoor exclusive use areas when shaded do not count towards shade requirements. That's what the zoning administrator clarified for us. And I have to apologize to the applicant for not being in contact with him. As soon as, you know, we had this conversation with the zoning administrator, I had an accident in the office. A toilet exploded on me when I flushed it. So I've been in visits with, you know, the city doctor's clinic. So I apologize, Jose. I'm not sure he's hearing me right now, but I should have conveyed this information immediately to him, but I failed to do so. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair. I can answer any other questions or let the applicant do his
Can
presentation.
we see that the conditions list again?
Oh, from the previous law?
Yeah. What?
Yeah.
Because really we don't need to go through the whole application. We really just need to have applicant address how they address the
Revised.
conditions we provided onto this thing, which was color scheme, lighting, and
Better shading.
materials.
Remember,
right?
there was a better shading thing.
Improve a shade to the general plaza space, right?
Right. And Maria, if you could be prepared to reiterate what the zoning administrator told you about shade when we get to see the revised plans, that might be helpful. Thank you.
And there was a coordination with the city to add a public seating. We say clear integration of proposed and existing elements in updated plans and elevations. So there was some graphics to make sure that the application was actually, or that the plans were actually being what we're being told, providing additional shade to the plaza space, some additional seating, and some lighting, right? That seems to be 4 points. 2 of them were kind of the same point, but 4. So let's, Jose, if you could show us some of those ideas, how you updated your renderings to show your actual conditions, some lighting, how you improved the shade.
And actually, I did. So if we go to the rendering, do I have access to the PDF or should I share my screen? How do we do it?
Just go ahead and share your screen, Jose. It'll be easier.
Easier.
You're pointing out your elements.
Last time I screwed up, so the screen window. Select.
It is 50%.
Okay, hold on. I'm almost there. Okay, do you guys see that?
Correct.
Barely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you make it bigger?
Okay. Well, how about that? Does that work?
It helps. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's. I mean, so I can make it bigger. So basically, what we did here, we came back and after the last meeting we had, the fabric color still remained the same. The steel columns, we actually selected an actual paint color with the client or the owner. and which is kind of matches somewhat the color of the existing building. So all the steel columns are going to be these sticklet, the DET 612, and we're also using the same color for the wrought iron around the sitting area. Okay.
Okay.
One of the things that you can see here, that big tree, but there's another image. Hold on a second. So one of the items that you guys had a concern on was having a larger tree. And so we went back to the landscape architect, and this is what she came out with. She suggested this tree. And if I go over to the landscape plan, you can see the larger trees are going to be in place here. You see that?
Can you zoom into the plant palette so I can read the species names?
Yeah.
It's a pistache.
Yeah, that's what I thought, but I want to see other things too.
So is that good? Is that good enough there?
That's very good. Thank you, Jose.
Yeah.
These are all acceptable.
Where is the star jasmine? Is it on the north side
Let me see what you have.
or the east side? We're looking at the little squiggly thing, the little, that little, yeah.
Let's see.
Sorry, I didn't review this before. I don't see any star jasmine on the plan. Am I missing
think
it?
it's-
Oh, there it is.
It's
Okay.
on that wall, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And there's
Now
an
that is
existing.
not the wall that the sculpture is on. The sculpture is to, yeah, okay, good. Okay.
And Carol, there's an existing trellis there actually even, so.
Oh, cool. All right, that
So-
makes sense.
So that's the tree. Going back to the rendering, if you notice, is we have these downlights that we have at every column, and I didn't actually, hold on a second. I have a picture of it here. This is, can you guys see it?
Yes.
This
Perfect.
light is what we're suggesting what's going to go in each column. Okay, and basically just downlight is not shining up. What else was there? Yeah. Oh, then we also kind of, I think you guys had a concern with the, there you go. With the sitting area, we just reduced some of the tables, getting smaller. And again, this was very preliminary, and it might change when they do this, but we removed them. I think somebody had a concern that they were overlapping the landscape area, so we just took them off of there.
Correct. Thank you for that.
I'm not sure what else was there. You have. What
I think it was overall shade. Did you? I think you did. I thought I saw a modified shade study in here.
Yeah. So what we did is last time we talked about this and the modified shade. I mean, let me go back to that. Hold on. There you go. So here it is. According to this, but then according to this shade structure, we're at 65% coverage, but that included the canopy, right? So right now I have Leslie in my office who's helping me with this. For what Maria said, apparently you cannot include that into the shade, right?
That's on private property, right?
Yeah, that's on private property. All this is private property.
Right.
Yeah. But
so the shade is from the seating area out towards the street, both elevations.
Right. So you say that, if I understand that correctly from what Maria said, was that we can only include the shaded area from the
railing out.
Yeah, the railing out, the public and private. And so Leslie just gave me the calculation of if we include the landscape trees, include portions of the building, that public access and around here. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. That portion of it. And then over here, a couple of feet of this area is shaded on the outside. That equals 54%. Sorry.
Is all the area that you're indicating with the hatch public area, or some of that private building area, private area?
So
I'm looking at that hatch. Yeah, right there. That's right what here. I'm wondering about.
This is, I mean, this whole thing is the existing building, but this is a canopy area. So anybody can walk underneath here. It's not protected. It's just the roof.
It's
right?
semi-private.
It's
or
semi-private.
semi-public is what they were.
Yeah,
the
semi-public. It's
determination
not
was.
private at all. So people can go and stand over here without any concerns.
Right. So the exclusion from the shade study is just places that are private or restricted access, which in
Which
this
is basically
would
what
be
you're
just the
telling me
walled
here,
in, the
right?
railed in area.
But I didn't know, see, right now, I'm gonna have, Leslie, can you do me a favor and update that and email to me? This one right here. So what I'm gonna have Leslie do, update the calculation and send me the same PDF, forward to you guys so you can have it. With the updated and excluding the sitting area.
And you said that came to 54%?
That's correct.
And that was done at what time of
That's
day?
there you go. June 21st at 12 p.m.
Whoops. Isn't our criteria 2 p.m.?
It's 12. It's been shifted to 12.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Good.
So, Mr.
Oof.
Chair, members of the DRB, I would just, depending on the DRB's decision today, recommendation to the PDSC director, I would be asking to the applicant to revise the design package to show
The
the
updated PDF.
correct calculations.
Right.
Yeah.
When you make that request, Maria, I know we looked at the light fixture here. I didn't see that in the design package that was presented or provided ahead of time. So if we could get that added in as well.
The cut sheet.
Yeah,
Mhm.
can you share it, Jose? I know you mentioned you just emailed it to me.
Yeah. Okay. You want to see the light?
Yes.
There you go.
Can you zoom in?
And that is a 6-inch, 4-inch, 4.5-inch light fixture. It's not very obtrusive, but it gives enough light to get an ambient light there.
And it's just a downlight.
Yeah, just a downlight. No,
Okay.
it doesn't light up.
When we're finished looking at the lights, Mr. Applicant, can you go to the plan view for the planting area? I want to check placement of the trees within the planters.
So it kind of shows you right there, and
Ooh.
you know, it's
Yeah.
right on the property, like I'm really close to the
Yeah.
property. So
Right. Now, these planters are bottomless. I understand that, but I am somewhat concerned about the closeness of the tree that is further to the east as viewed the other way. That tree, yep. Look how close that is to the planter wall. And red pushes, no. Well, that too. That one and then the other one, Jose, the middle one. Look how close that is to the planter wall. Yikes. These, what is that distance? Because pistachios can get good sized trunks on them.
right. So this right here, I can tell you what the distance is.
Yeah.
I have to go and.
What is that? The bench 6 feet, so maybe it's only 4 feet
Yeah,
or so?
Probably, it's probably about, no, so let me see. I'll tell you what it is.
Thank you, sir.
So this, if this is, yeah. So this distance from here to the curb is yeah, it's about 6 feet. This right here, from that center to that. And I talked, you know, last conversation we had, I remember somebody mentioned they wanted to move the trees closer to the curb.
To give more shade, yeah,
more shade.
right.
But talking to the landscape architect, she said, Jose, I don't recommend that because of the trunk size and that.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, no, this is,
There's
I
plenty of room in there.
am a little concerned about the selection of the species. This is a big round-headed crown tree. I'm not sure if it's quite the right species for the space. The space is more maybe tall, lineal, conal, more conal shape or I don't know. That tree, I don't know if that's gonna fit well into that space.
And
What-
Mr. Chair, Ms. Clement, members of the DRB, we did run through the Department of Transportation and Mobility landscape architect, David Marchewka, the revised design package, and he was okay with it.
As far as that overhang the right away, Maria?
We didn't discuss details. We just shared with him the revised design package.
It seems like the rounded canopy form, which is what this tree wants to do, is gonna like really bump into the building. That's what was sort of so great about the palm trees, although they didn't provide any shade.
Well, that's the concern about it. But again, it goes back to maintenance, right? I mean, as you know, this tree to get to that point is going to be, I don't know what, 20, 30 years from now. I don't know what long it takes to get to that point. But
20 years.
It's got to be maintained, right?
And pruned. It's going to have to be pruned
And that's part
judiciously.
Right.
Correct. So I guess that's the risk this client is taking,
right?
And whether it pulls pavement, Carol, is a risk this client's taking. That if it affects the paving within that area, it's their responsibility to make sure it stays safe and not a liability.
Deep water those trees. Don't surface water. Send those roots down with your irrigation scheduling.
I did talk to the owner about the palm trees, and she mentioned the reason the owners removed it, or somebody, whoever removed it, was they were so tall, they were leaning and touching the building with the wind.
Yeah, I can understand that.
That's a problem. That's why they decided, because, you know, I mean, that's pretty risky there, hitting a window, breaking it, and falling on somebody. That'd be horrible.
Yeah.
So as far as our view here, we're looking at today, I'm hearing that the criteria or the conditions we put on this application we're taken care of. Is that, anyone have any objections to that point of view? They created some additional shade by adding trees as suggested. They provided some lighting. The materials and the coloring of the built form on the shade structure and the railing were adjusted to match more of the building tone and color. Is there any other points that we asked for that are not being met here today?
The LER also mentions coordination with the city to add public seating in the plaza area. Did we address that?
Yeah. So if we go, let me see.
Looks like there's more than one bench when there was only one bench
So
before.
field number 9, or if you look at this plan, let's see where's that. Future concrete bench on right of way to be coordinated with the city of Tucson for RNA's meeting. So we're calling it out here on this plan. And I talked to the owner about it. So she said she was going to coordinate that with the city.
Was there to be 2?
So there's one there's one right now. This is an existing
one. Okay. Sorry, Jose, I missed it.
And so we're adding that one.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
That was for last comments.
Thank you.
On the lighting, I think you mentioned we're doing 1 per column. Do we have a plan that reflects the lighting?
I don't have a plan. I can provide you one, but basically at each column location, you can see where the columns are. We are going to add 1 light. So you can see all these columns. We're adding 1 per column. And we are going to submit it for part of the construction documents because now we're adding electrical systems to that. We got to change the plans to submit electrical plans to the city for review.
Are you planning to run the electrical along the structure?
Definitely, yeah. There'll be, and it's good. All the electrical is going to be in conduits, and it's going to be painted to match the same metal structure. It's going to be hidden, you know, so you're not going to see anything that looks weird. And then we'll penetrate into the square tube and then come out, whatever need to come out for, you know, where the light location is going to be.
Yeah, I think I would be comfortable approving it, you know, based on this discussion, but if we could formalize that some way so that Maria can keep track of it once it goes through the inspection process.
I could revise this one right here, this drawing, and just add it on here. It's gonna show the circle locations for where the lights. So with this new update that I'm gonna send Maria with the light fixture added to it and the new calculations for the shades calculations, I can add the light fixture into this plan so you guys can see it and have it.
I think that'd be appreciated, Jose. If you could just put a call out that points to one of the columns,
sure,
or give it a number 10 would be your.
Sure, definitely. Yeah, that would
be appreciated. And then as far as development services goes, now that you're producing lighting, yeah, they're going to require electrical drawings and conduit mapping, you know, all those things in order for you to get a building permit. But I think for us, having that shown in the renderings, and then if you can, when you resend materials, if you make sure that actually has an explicit call out, that would be appreciated for record keeping.
Okay.
Are we at a agreement? Anyone else have any concerns? We can make a motion on this one.
My only other concern, I think there's still a little bit of ambiguity about the railing. It says design per tenant or per owner. I see that it's called out in the elevations, the actual construction. So I just wanted to clarify, is this what the intent is, or is that still to be decided?
No, this is what the intent is right here. That 1x2 top, the 2x2 verticals, 1x1 horizontal steel come. So this is what we're building it as.
Awesome.
Okay.
Can you point out where did you read to be decided by owner?
It was the material palette.
Oh, the material palette.
That may just be a lingering note that needs to be edited.
Yeah, we can remove it.
Oh, there it is. Design and color per tenant.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll remove that.
The color. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Grace, are you good?
Yes.
I'll entertain a motion. I made the last one. We can, Maria, I think you need to steal the screen back.
Give me a second.
I'll make the motion. I make a motion that the design review board has reviewed the applicant's project for compliance with the Rio Nuevo area design criteria and recommends to the Planning and Development Services Director approval, finding the project in compliance with the building design standards set forth in UDC section 5.12.7.c 1 through 15 and 5.12.7.d, subject to the following conditions: that the shade study and lighting be formalized in the final approved design document.
I'll second the motion.
Oh, you beat me to it, Carol.
Yeah. It's not a race. I'm sorry.
Right on. Any discussion? Amendments? No. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. Sounds like you got your approval, Jose.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you,
Okay.
Jose.
Thank you. Grace, that was a good reading. You did good
Thank
there.
you.
Thank you.
Actually, I think that by owner was that phrasing specifically was what triggered that comment to begin with, that we had to have clarity on what they were actually proposing. So it was good catching that that didn't get
Yeah.
modified in there.
Yeah, good. Very good. Oh, geez.
Let's move on to number 7 here. Changing meeting time from 7:30 to 8:30.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, Mr. Chair, members of the DRB, so this is from a request from Rosemary Bright to change it from 7:30 to 8:30 to allow those DRB members and potential future DRB members more flexibility, you know, with taking care of their children, taking them to school in the morning.
I don't have any opposition to this change. Does this negatively impact anyone on the board?
No.
Is 8 not early or late enough? Rosemary's not here to discuss,
Yeah, she's not
unfortunately.
here.
I think
I'm
the
fine.
8:30 time, the only condition I'd want to put on that, and I'm gonna table the talking point that we had earlier in the agenda that we moved to the end to another meeting, because these meetings are taking a long time lately, and just by moving it later, those of us, you know, we can drop our kids off, but we all have professional duties to do outside of here. So that's the
That
only
would be my
concern
concern as well, is that we're just pushing it later into the workday.
Mm-hmm.
And we're a volunteer board, but I think I'd be okay with this shift if we can all maybe, Maria, maybe this is a time that I want to have that discussion about, you know, we had it earlier in the agenda here about, you know, ways to potentially streamline these meetings or make them a little more time sensitive, and or looking at, you know, ways we run the meeting, which likely be just me, but
No, that's all.
If we do that, can we have that discussion at a time when we're maybe not discussing cases, or heck, would everyone on here be willing to have a more of kind of like a strategy meeting or a non-quorumed meeting or discussion? Because we could do that outside of public notice, couldn't we, Maria? Since we're not discussing a case, we're doing more of a study session.
Mr. Chair, yes, members of the DRB, definitely. If we don't see any cases coming in for the next DRB meeting, I can definitely go ahead and schedule the meeting to discuss these items to be pending, just for discussion purposes, as a study session, definitely. If there are cases in 2 weeks to review, does the board, would the board like for staff to schedule a separate meeting, an additional meeting, maybe next Friday?
That's kind of where I was heading, was just to see if anyone would be up for having that discussion outside of a case. Because today I'm like, I don't want to have this discussion now, because we've already been on here for, you know, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, or whatever. It's just ridiculous. So
yeah.
Well, I'd like Rosemary to join the conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's number 7 and what we're talking about now are kind of two different ideas. I think we're okay with moving it to 8:30, right? That's what I heard. Everyone was okay with moving it to 8:30. What process do we need to follow to do that, Maria? Public notice or a rules change?
Yeah, it would be a public notice, and Rosemary would attend as a member of the audience, because she's no longer a member of the DRB. Her term already expired, she has the ability to continue serving 4 more years. And that's why she was requesting this change.
Right. And I would like to facilitate that because we're
Yeah.
a little short on
People.
architectural viewpoint. You know, we want to have some parity and balance in the board. Carol?
Yeah, I think our discussion on procedures and timeliness will dovetail with our move to 8:30 possibly.
Yes.
Because so I think we should not vote on the 8:30 change right now, but discuss the whole bailiwick at when we can, when there's no cases to review or a separate special workshop meeting.
Okay, I agree with that too. That's fine.
Would we want to have this number 3 that we push to the end? Would that be part of that meeting too?
Yeah,
DRB discussion of guidelines?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Right. That we have a lot of little homework, just housekeeping stuff, right?
Yes, and I also would like to see if we can include the zoning administrator, which I've been trying to schedule into this meeting, to discuss shade requirements as well.
That would be,
especially with the new input you just received, Maria. Yeah. I think we need that to have some sort of definition and or revision to that, whatever it reads in the Rio Nuevo checks. So that semi-public and public space part, that I can't recall if that's actually if that terminology is in there.
It is. Let me see. Not to discuss it right now. I know, but it is.
but we are.
Yeah. Let's see. Pedestrian sidewalks, all sidewalks and pedestrian pathways. So she interpreted, the zone administrator interpreted that to be within public and semi-public.
Right. I think we need that. We need that that clarification added into here somehow. So, and what that means, likely a definition of what semi-public versus private would be determined. Like we just need some clarification on that. So we can have that discussion when we get back together and have. I think we have like what three topics we're looking at having a study session on. Shifting time, procedures, timeliness, and shade requirements. Right?
And this one from item number 3.
I think that one kind of that's the same discussion. I think of the timeliness one of like narrowing down what we discuss and what we don't discuss and how we move through our approvals.
Okay, so then I will just include in the next agenda these 3 items here.
Yeah.
Okay.
That number 3 and number 8, in my opinion, are not distinctly different ideas.
I know, I disagree, you guys, because my point is, sorry.
Okay.
My point is, like, I think we missed out on not looking at the philosophy of the UDC today in finding a possible hanger to hang my concerns with that Wilson Street. I think we missed out on something there.
Well, that's part of
we
procedures.
can. We are the
right?
What?
Wouldn't that be part of procedures? Like what we look at, what procedures we use to review and look at. That's
okay. As long as we look at what is the purview of the DRB, because I think we've narrowed our purview too much to our detriment, actually. Because we're so strict with those things, but the UDC, I would like to talk about that if we could.
Well, that's, yeah, that I was thinking
Okay,
that that's
okay,
part of the
whatever.
discussion, Carol, that, yeah.
We're talking semantics here.
The what we actually are charged with looking at, how we provide that review, when we provide that review, and how we discuss that is, I think, part of this.
Right.
That's all the same idea to me.
And in particular, what is Trump? Is it the UDC design philosophy, even if they're asking for a DDO? I don't know. We don't know.
Well,
So
Carol, I think
I
the
will,
DDO process here is an avenue to, they think it's built into the UDC for conditions like this. I think it's
Yeah, yeah.
intentionally the way that they were using it. I don't know that it was an accident.
No, that's kind of my conflict with your point, Carol, is that the UDC provides this process. That's part, we're not outside of the UDC. DDO is not
Right.
outside the UDC. It's
We are
part
not.
of the UDC.
So can we refer to the UDC philosophy, which if you go to those, there's a lot of room that we can stick stuff into, hang things on. I think we
Potentially.
should talk about it.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
so if it's okay with the DRB, then I will include in the next agenda clarification of this specific item D, correct?
I will be wanting to reference the number one section of the whole UDC thing in like landscape or whatever it is, Maria. I don't know enough to say exactly what it is, but that philosophy. When I talked to Ann Warner a while ago, she recommended that I go to that section to review as part of my review process. We don't have to do it now.
Okay, I'm just wondering where's that
What section I'm
philosophy?
talking about?
Yeah,
Okay,
Probably
well, let me go.
7.15, right? Is there
I don't know. I
is
have it in
landscape?
my files. Hold on, you guys. I'll find it. Just a moment. What is this? Design review. I will have this under design review committees. Okay, and I'm COT. Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah, this just defines.
Oh, I just had the link to it. It's going to take me too long to waste the time now.
Yeah.
But
okay.
I will send you an email maybe for
Yeah,
what
that'll
I'm
work.
talking about.
That'll work. So I
And
can,
Carol,
Yeah.
make sure that email's just to Maria, not to the entire board, please.
correct.
Okay. Okay.
Maria can
Why
send
is
it
that?
to us.
Because we're not supposed to do the business
Open meeting
via
laws,
email.
correct.
Okay.
Open meeting laws, it's not on the agenda. Or there's no agenda for that email.
Okay. I'll find. I hope it's not. I'm not thinking of TDOT standards. I don't know. I don't know. I'll find out.
Do some research.
Yes, sir.
We have anything else on today's agenda? Staff announcements?
Nothing specific that can come to my mind right now, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so before we adjourn, Maria, you're going to look at whether or not we have any cases. You should know in the next couple of days, correct? Whether we have cases for the next meeting
I should know
By the
by
end of-
Monday,
by Monday or Tuesday,
by
right?
the
next
end of
week?
Monday.
Right. So could you update us whether or not we have cases or not? And if we do have cases, maybe through an email communication to the board, we can either set up a separate study session or decide whether that if we have one case or a short, something that looks like it's going to be an easy one, we could tack it on to that additional meeting. Let's have that discussion after we know what the next meeting agenda looks like. whether there's cases or not.
Sounds good.
We're out of here. 10:02. Officially.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody, again.
Thanks. Have a great weekend.
Thank you,
too. Take care.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.